Okay, so hey, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. My name is Jessie Mongeon, and today I'm going to be talking about leveraging AI for efficient technical docs and routine maintenance. Now, I know there are a lot of other talks on this docket about maintenance, so hopefully we don't get a little too repetitive, so I've kept that part of my presentation a bit short and focused more on the effective doc side of things. But a little bit about me, I am currently the senior technical writer at the Dfinity Foundation. We are the foundation behind the Internet Computer Protocol blockchain, and I was previously the senior technical writer at Filebase, a decentralized storage platform. So all of my technical writing experience is in the blockchain and crypto space, and I've also written 2 books on that industry, which is also commonly referred to as the Web3 industry. So I spend a lot of time with developers and writing documentation specifically for that set of technology, which is a bit different than your traditional API docs or your traditional end user docs for things like AWS or Red Hat. So my perspective is a little unique in that regard, but there are still plenty of overlapping concepts when it comes to AI and technical docs. So today I'm going to be talking about the fact that while there are hundreds of ways to use AI for content creation or content brainstorming, something that I use AI a lot for is just kind of getting ideas or getting a different perspective on wording or outlines or things of that. How can we utilize AI to expose areas of the docs that already exist and how they can be more effective, or where there are gaps or pieces missing or pieces that are unclear. And then I'll briefly touch on AI for the routine, mundane maintenance task. Like I said, since there are so many other talks in this program about that, I've kept that part a little short. So first and foremost, what really is effective documentation? So I think it comes down to 4 kind of key descriptions. That is, documentation is effective when it is accurate and up to date. It is consistent in both tone and format. It's concise without losing any meaning or overall impact, and it's organized and easy to navigate. So how can AI help create effective technical docs? So my primary way that I utilize AI for effective docs, and that is my personal favorite, is through specific purpose chatbots. So not your ChatGPT or your Claude, not any of those that are trained on very large LLMs. I personally really enjoy having a chatbot that I have trained on just a specific set of content, and then being able to interact with that chatbot to get an idea of what exactly it knows or what conclusions it can draw based on the small set of content that it has. And then another thing that I love to use it for is mass text replacement or updates, things that are a little bit more involved than just a simple find and replace. And for consistency across docs, we can also give it a style guide and ask that the draft that we give it complies to that style guide to assure that things like spelling, grammar, capitalization, basic formats like if it's a hyphen or an asterisk for bullet points, making sure all of that is consistent and adheres to whatever the style guide recommends. And then lastly, format fixes or adjustments that go beyond what just a typical regex expression could perform. So giving it some specific conditions that otherwise would need a really complex regex that is probably not everyone's favorite to write. It's definitely not mine. So going a bit more into my personal favorite, the specific purpose chatbots. I have a chatbot that is trained specifically on the developer documentation for the Internet Computer Protocol. And so I can interact with that chatbot as if I am the everyday user that has questions about our platform, about a certain aspect of our native programming language. And I can see exactly what sources it's going to try and pull that information from, and then what response it's able to conclude based on those sources. And the great thing about our chatbot that we use at Dfinity is that it is on all of our internetcomputer.org domains. So it's not just on our docs, it's on things like our developer forum or our main marketing website. And we track all of those conversations. So I can go on to the dashboard and see any questions that AI decided that it didn't know what a good answer was, or it wasn't completely confident in the answer and it gave it a rating of uncertain. And so I can take a look at those and I can see that if the AI can't answer it, that means that there is no source for the question or the topic that the user is asking. And so that means there's a documentation gap. So that's something that needs to be addressed. And especially I can take a look at the frequency of those individual questions. So of course, we always get the one-off question. Somebody is asking our chatbot a very general question that is probably better suited for Google, but they've asked our chatbot thinking that it's a general purpose bot, but it can't give them a source because it doesn't know who the first aerospace engineer was, or some very general prompt like that. And so those, of course, are your edge cases that you can filter out. But for reoccurring questions that seem to pop up a lot when there are consistently uncertain or no answers at all, that's a really good indication of where there needs to be more docs for that. But then the other side of that is also there might be the ability for the AI to answer it, but the answer may be pretty poor. It may kind of give a half right, half wrong answer, especially I see this a lot for questions in relation to our specific programming language called Motoko. There are a lot of bits and pieces of that language that are being sourced from like our developer forum, our Discord server that the bot picks up on, and some of those are very old. And so it will reference something that was deprecated 6 months ago, or say that something isn't supported, but we've launched support for that feature 3 weeks ago, or something to that effect. And so kind of seeing how it's able to determine which pieces it picks up on and which pieces it doesn't is also important, and just means that you need to go in and improve the documentation that is there, so that is a bit more prominent for the AI to latch onto, and it doesn't default to some of these lesser up-to-date sources. Of course, when you're sourcing things from like a Discord server or a forum, that is always a bit iffy in general, especially the Discord. But just kind of keeping track of that and being able to see the patterns with just the overall quality of the chatbot's answers are also just a really good indicator of docs. And then lastly is the frequency of questions. So things that are asked consistently, and docs do exist for it. Say the docs for are very comprehensive and up to date, and they are a really great source of that information. But if that is a question that is being consistently asked to the chatbot, it means that it probably isn't easily accessible, that documentation. So that is kind of a call to, well, is this doc in the right category? Is it in the correct subheading? Is it easily findable in the general navigation of the website? If it's something that is asked pretty frequently and is something that you're expecting users are going to want to see pretty frequently, can you make it more prominent in the navigation of the docs? Can you make it easier to find naturally, instead of them having to default to this Ask AI chatbot to try and get the answer when the answer does exist? So just some really quick examples with the chatbot that we use at Dfinity. A very common question we get is, how do I deploy a smart contract to ICP? And our bot's answer for this is very comprehensive and very extensive. It gives several different options for deployment. It includes extensive details and step-by-step instructions. It includes all of the prerequisite installation that you need for tooling. It includes every single terminal command that the user needs to run. So that is a really great response, and just shows that our docs in that initial kind of getting started onboarding category is really a good source for the bot to draw from. On the other side, a question like, how do I deploy a smart contract in Ruby? The bot answers based on knowledge sources. There's no specific information about deploying smart contracts written on Ruby. Now, Ruby isn't something that we support, but that is something that we could make more clear in documentation. Instead of this no specific information, the bot could instead give an answer saying that at this time, we do not have a SDK that supports Ruby for ICP. So mass updates and text replacement is another thing that I really like to use a trained Copilot bot for. So this is a little bit different from your traditional chatbot, since chatbots are more end user focused and you're going to see it on the documentation or the marketing side of things. Whereas when you're actually in the markdown files of the docs and you want to make a bunch of replacements, there are several individual Copilot tools that exist. One of them is called Root Code that I'm a fan of, that you can give it a specific set of data to be trained on, and then you can ask it to perform code-related changes, and in this case, Markdown. So I love to use that instead of just kind of the VS Code find and replace. And you can use it for very general things like replace all descriptions of the API from alpha to beta, append /doc/v1 to every URL that's being redirected to, update the tone of pages from using we terminology and grammar to you terminology and grammar. And some of this also goes in line with kind of style guide side of things. And that's going to be the next thing that we touch on, is you can also just train it on only your doc's style guide. And so I do also have an instance running for this, where our style guide is extremely detailed and specific with a lot of very kind of unique bits and pieces that are not per se a common style guide choice, and that's intentional. And so there are lots of instances where we have folks that want to contribute to our docs, since they are open source, and they go off of kind of the more common conventionals of style guides rather than kind of our very specific little bits and pieces that we have. So for an example here, on the left, I gave it just some text and I changed the capitalization of some of the words and the tone a little bit. And then I asked the AI to give me the version of it that adheres to our style guide. So you can see the highlighted bits that it went through and fixed the capitalization errors. It changed the tone from using we build our own to subnets build their own. And then just some other bits at the last sentence there, it kind of combined a couple bits to add to conciseness, since that's another bit in our style guide about really prioritizing concise content over more redundant or verbose content. And then lastly, more complex format fixes. So going back to that chatbot that you can, or not chatbot, but Copilot bot that you can use when you are actually writing docs code. I love to give it very specific things and just kind of seeing what it can do with it. Now, of course, it's not always perfect, but it definitely is a bit easier in some cases than me going page by page and manually filtering things. So for example, every page that's tagged tutorial, update the bullet points to use an asterisk rather than a hyphen, or update all variations of the phrase chain fusion. So all variations of capitalization or other instances where it may be hyphenated or things like that, to hyperlink to our chain fusion marketing page, or add custom CSS that centers all images on every page that's tagged guide. That last one is especially useful since there are several instances where we have images that are very meticulously placed on the page. So we don't want everything to be centered across all pages. We just want some pages, particularly the guides, to have those screenshots and diagrams centered just for accessibility when reading the page. So that's all for kind of the making use of AI for effective docs. And so then how can AI be used for automated docs maintenance? We can use CI jobs that run every time a docs update is published, or we can do automated scripts that run at set intervals, nightly, weekly, are pretty common ones. Or we can also use ad hoc scripts that get run whenever something like a new feature or an update is released. And the cool thing that I really like about the fact that automation scripts are becoming more and more popular, especially ones that are influenced by AI, is that you can just ask AI to help you write one. So you don't have to be a programmer or a software engineer. AI for a lot of these very basic CI things can help you get most of the way there when it comes to writing these scripts. So a couple that I have written that I think are kind of useful examples are, you can check that all hyperlinks return a result, or you can check that all hyperlinks and then return any that result in a 404. So any that get no feedback and it's a not paid or not found page. That is really useful, especially when linking out to things that are external to your docs website. So I imagine that most folks have internal docs links to make sure that everything on your own docs are valid links, but it's a bit of a challenge to make sure that when you're referencing external domains that those stay up to date and also just stay live. Then you can also check that all docs adhere to the style guide and simply return a list of those that do not comply. You don't necessarily need to have it go in and make those style guide changes for every one of those pages. You can just have it return a list. And there may be some that intentionally don't comply for whatever reason, but that just general list is a good insight to have just kind of as a routine check. And then lastly, you can return a list of docs that have not been updated in, say, more than 30 days. So just kind of taking a look at which content may need to have a update or just needs to be double checked to make sure that it hasn't kind of flown under the radar for some other routine update that it may have needed. So just to quickly wrap things up, specific doc trained chatbots can be used to expose doc gaps and areas of improvement. Routine tasks like link checks and style compliance can be automated, and automation can help make docs just in general more maintainable. And AI agents can be given prompts for large, complex, or widespread updates based on specific conditions that other workflows like regexes may not be able to handle. So that'll wrap things up for me. Thanks so much for your time today, and shout out to all of the other speakers that are speaking throughout the rest of today.